Green is best. That is what we know. Green is strongest. Green is life. But life, for us, begins with pain. I remember my first breath not as a cry, not as warmth, but as hunger. Orcs are not born the way humans are. We do not come screaming from a mother's arms. We claw our way out of the ground itself, born of spores, born of war. My first memory was gnawing emptiness in my gut so sharp it forced me to fight before I even knew words. Around me, other small shapes were crawling from the same fungal cradle, my brothers, my rivals, my first enemies. I sank my teeth into one before I even stood upright. His blood was hot, his flesh my first meal. 2 more followed before my body had fully hardened, their screams weak. Pitiful became my first lullaby. Their deaths, my first victory. That is our way. That has always been our way. The fields where we emerged were not quiet nurseries. They were killing grounds at the edge of the war camp. The air was thick with black smoke, the hammering of crude machines, the stink of fungus and sweat and oil. To my eyes that had barely opened, it was not horror, it was home. I had no name then. None of us did. Names are not given. They are earned. Until then, we are just boys, fists and teeth for the meat grinder of war. We gathered instinctively, small packs of green skin trembling with hunger and rage. There was no friendship, only shifting alliances and betrayal at the first sign of weakness. Every laugh was edged with threat, every glance a test. The weak were culled, the strong grew stronger. It was brutal, merciless, and yet it felt right. I learned my first truth that day in this world. Survival is not gifted. It is taken, torn from the hands or throats of others. Pain is not an enemy. It is a teacher. Hunger is not a curse. It is a command. And deep inside, I understood something else. Something no one had to tell me. This was only the beginning. The battles between us boys were nothing compared to what waited beyond the camp. Humans, tanks, space marines. Wars so large they split the sky open and turned Earth into ash. But before I could dream of those battles, I had to earn my first name. And to do that, I would have to spill more blood. The first days after clawing my way from the earth were a blur of hunger, violence, and noise. We smaller ones stayed together, not because we trusted one another, but because packs meant survival. Alone, a runt could be torn apart in moments. In numbers, even the weakest might last long enough to scavenge scraps. Still, we all knew the truth. Protection was temporary. Sooner or later, one of us would have to prove who was strongest. Orc life allows no middle ground. You rise or you rot. My moment came sooner than expected. He was bigger than the rest of us, his frame already hardened by a few extra days of life. That alone made him dangerous. Time for an orc is growth. His tusks had just started to push through his gums, giving his face a jagged, savage grin. The others called him Guerwa because he liked to lunge for throats. He had already put down 2 of our number, tearing them apart in quick bursts of fury. The rest of us gave him space, the way prey gives space to a prowling predator. But Guerwa's eyes found me. Perhaps I had stood too tall. Perhaps my hunger had made me careless, baring my teeth too openly. Whatever the reason, I saw the challenge burning in his gaze. And I knew I was next. He charged without warning, a blur of muscle and rage. I had only a half-gnawed bone in my hand. No armor, no weapon, just instinct. I dropped the bone and braced myself, lowering my head the way I had seen bigger orcs do. When Guerwa slammed into me, my forehead cracked against his nose with a crunch so sharp it sang in my ears. Green blood poured down his face, but pain did not slow him. Pain made him angrier, stronger. He lunged again, his teeth snapping for my throat. I twisted, but too late. His bite sank into my shoulder. Flesh tore. Hot blood spilled. The pain was different. Not weakness, not defeat. It was a fire, a blinding clarity that burned away fear and hesitation. Something awoke inside me, rage so pure it drowned thought itself. I slammed my knee into his gut, forcing him to release. Then I struck, fists hammering his face again and again, my knuckles splitting, his teeth breaking under the blows. The other boys had formed a circle around us, jeering, hooting, waiting to see who would eat and who would be eaten. Their noise faded to nothing. In that moment, there was only Guerwa and me. He staggered, tried to lunge again, but I didn't stop. Couldn't stop. I drove him to the dirt, my fists pulping his face into green mush. Even when his body went limp, my fury carried on, pounding, tearing, rending, until strong hands pulled me off. It was a knob. One of the bosses, towering above us in crude armor, scarred and massive. His eyes studied the ruin at my feet, then looked at me. "You fight good. Runt," he growled, voice like gravel grinding together. "But you waste good meat." Only then did I notice Guerwa's body was useless, too mangled to eat. I had let rage destroy what could have been food for the tribe. I expected punishment. Instead, the knob tossed something at my feet, a crude club, little more than metal wrapped in leather. "You grub skull now," he declared. "Tomorrow, you raid." And just like that, I had a name, not glorious, not fearsome, but mine, a mark carved in blood and bone. That night I ate last, scraps and gristle, but I ate as Grubskull. And tomorrow, I would fight again. The night after my naming was restless. Around me, the warband lived its endless rhythm of violence and noise fights breaking out over scraps of meat, drunken laughter echoing against the tin walls of shacks, the clang of hammers on twisted steel as mechs tinkered through the dark. It was chaos, yet somehow ordered. This was the lullaby of orc kind. I clutched my crude club to my chest, half dreaming of battles yet to come. At dawn, the knob who had named me Skraka, his skin darkened with scars and age gathered his boys. There were perhaps 30 of us, some taller, some smaller, but all armed in one way or another, clubs, rusted axes, a few battered shooters scavenged from human dead. Skraka himself carried a cleaver the size of a door, its edge dented but deadly. He looked us over with a sneer that was equal parts contempt and challenge. "Listen, runts," he barked. "Today we raid, small farm, few humies, easy meat, easy loot, but any boy who runs, I kill myself. Any boy who grabs loot before I say, I kill, understand." We grunted, shouted, snarled our agreement. The rules were clear and simple: follow, fight, or die. The warband's camp stretched out in every direction, a sprawling patchwork of tents, scrap metal huts, and smoke-belching vehicles. It smelled of grease, fungus, and blood. To me, it was beautiful. Every orc, every squig, every rumbling machine had a purpose to feed the hunger of war. Skraka led us to the battle wagon, a monstrous vehicle of riveted plates and roaring engines. It shook with every rev, coughing out black smoke that sent squigs scattering. We piled inside, bodies pressing against one another, tusks clacking, fists shoving. I found myself wedged between Zit, a braggart who claimed to have killed 10 humans with one axe, and Crunch, a silent boy whose eyes stared forward with unnerving focus. Zit laughed too loud. Crunch didn't laugh at all. Both unsettled me in different ways. The wagon lurched forward, bouncing over rough ground with no suspension. Each jolt slammed us together, sparking brawls that Skraka quelled with swift, brutal blows. By the time we reached the ridge overlooking our target, one boy was unconscious, blood streaming from his ears. No one cared. That was the way. Below us lay the human settlement, neat rows of crops, a few clustered buildings, smoke rising from chimneys. Tiny figures moved among the fields, unaware of what waited. My heart pounded not with fear, but with anticipation. This would be my first true fight against prey that was not green. Skraka raised his cleaver high, the morning light glinting on its jagged edge. "No shooting till I say," he ordered. "We get close. We tear them apart before they know we're here." We nodded, breathless with hunger for blood. The humans had no idea that their world, their peace, their fragile order, was about to be drowned in a tide of green. And for the first time, I felt it, the surge, the whisper in my veins, the promise of violence. Tomorrow had come. Skraka's cleaver came down in a vicious arc, the signal to attack. We spilled from the ridge like a green tide, boots pounding the soil, war cries splitting the morning calm. The humans looked up, their faces twisting from confusion into horror as they realized what was happening. Some froze. Others dropped their tools and ran for the safety of their buildings. A few, braver or more foolish, raised farming implements as weapons. I charged with the rest, my crude club heavy in my hand. My first target stood his ground, a broad-shouldered man gripping a long-handled hoe like a spear. He jabbed at me as I closed, the iron tip grazing my chest. The sting was nothing, less than nothing. Pain only sharpened my hunger. I swung my club sideways with all my strength. Bone cracked under the blow. The man collapsed, gasping for breath. I loomed over him, raised my club, and brought it down again. His skull caved with a wet crunch. It was different from killing another boy. This wasn't rivalry. This was prey. The thrill was sharper, cleaner. I roared to the sky, the sound torn from my chest without thought. Around me, other boys were doing the same, scattering across the fields like wolves among sheep. The humans broke quickly. Many ran, only to be cut down by larger orcs. A few barricaded themselves in houses, but flimsy doors and windows splintered under our assault. The air filled with smoke and screams, with the iron stink of blood. One woman caught my attention. She stood over two children, a knife trembling in her hand. Her eyes locked onto mine, not with fear, but with a desperate fire. She lunged. The blade bit into my thigh, sharp enough to pierce my green hide. I bellowed in pain and rage, backhanding her to the dirt. Still she rose, placing herself between me and the young ones. "Run!" she screamed at them, her voice breaking. The children darted past her, legs pumping. She hurled herself at me again, knife flashing. I caught her by the throat, lifting her into the air. She kicked, clawed, slashed at my arm, but her strength was nothing against mine. I squeezed until her struggles slowed. Her eyes never left mine. Hatred, defiance, and something else I could not name. Not fear, something deeper. I snapped her neck quickly. Mercy, perhaps, though orcs do not know the word. I tossed her body aside and turned to chase the children, but Skraka's roar cut across the fields, back to the wagon. The raid was done, loot secured. More killing would waste time. I obeyed, though part of me wanted to run down the last survivors. Instead, I glanced back. One child had fallen in the dirt, a bloody axe buried in his small body. Zit stood over him, grinning. The other fled toward the fields, vanishing into the rows of crops. I let him go, whether from discipline or some strange curiosity, I could not say. We regrouped at the battle wagon, bloodied but triumphant. 4 of our boys had fallen too slow, too careless. Their bodies were left behind. Orcs do not bury their dead. The spores will grow new ones soon enough. Skraka inspected us with his one good eye, cleaver still dripping. He growled, dissatisfied. Too many dead. Humies shouldn't kill any of us. You fight like grots. He turned on one boy clutching a looted gun. No shooting. You shot anyway. The boy stammered a denial, but Skraka didn't wait. His cleaver split the runt in half from shoulder to hip. Silence fell. Skraka pointed at me. Grubskull, take gun. You earned it. I stepped forward, heart pounding, and lifted the weapon from the corpse. It was a laser gun. Imperial issue, heavy in my hands but powerful. My first real weapon. My first step beyond nameless boy. That night, back at camp, I sat by the fire, turning the weapon over in my hands. The smell of roasting meat filled the air. Orks laughed, boasted, fought, celebrated the raid. Yet my thoughts drifted to the human woman, the way she had stood against me. Knife trembling but spirit unbroken, she had died for her children. Orks never die for others. I stared into the fire and wondered why the memory of her eyes burned hotter than the battle itself. The farm raid had been nothing but practice. Skraka said as much when he gathered us days later. Next fight, harder. Not farmers. Real soldiers. Guns. Armor. Loot worth taking. His scarred face split in a grin. More risk. More reward. The target was a mining outpost tucked against the side of a hill, guarded by Imperial troops. Not many, perhaps a garrison of 30 or 40, but trained, disciplined, armed with real weapons. Unlike the farm, this would not be slaughter. This would be war. We rode to battle in 2 battle wagons this time, rattling monsters of iron and fury. A squad of bikers flanked us, engines roaring, exhaust trailing black smoke that stung the eyes. The ride was long and rough, filled with the usual fights and laughter. By the time the outpost came into view, our bodies ached from blows, but our blood was hot and ready. The outpost was no village. A wall of rockcrete and steel surrounded the compound, guard towers standing tall at each corner, gun barrels glinted in the sun, already scanning the land. Beyond the walls rose sturdy buildings, their angles sharp, their discipline alien to orc eyes. Humans built like they thought order could keep chaos out. Fools, Gragskull, a knob with half his jaw missing, led the assault force. His orders were simple. When I say go, you run, fast, zigzag, get to the wall, over the wall, kill everything inside. No questions. There were none. Orcs did not ask questions. Orcs obeyed until it was time to kill the boss and take his place. We crouched at the tree line, waiting. My heart hammered not from fear, but from hunger for the fight. Then, from the far side of the outpost, an explosion shook the air. Skraka's flanking group had struck. That was the signal. Go, roared Gragskull. We surged forward into the open killing ground, a screaming horde. Lasfire lanced down from the towers. Red beams seared the air, cutting through boys around me. One fell. A hole burned clean through his chest. Another's head burst like an overripe fruit. Still we ran, the thunder of our boots shaking the ground. I ran in a zigzag, as I had seen veterans do, clutching my looted laser gun tight. Around me, boys dropped by the dozen, but the charge did not falter. The wall grew closer, 50 meters, 40, 30. Orc shooters in the back roared to life, answering fire with crude, inaccurate blasts. Most missed, but some found their mark. A guard toppled from a tower, his body crumpling on the rocks below. 20 meters. I lifted my laser gun, aimed at a human silhouette on the wall, and fired. My first shot scorched the stone. My second caught him in the shoulder, spinning him out of sight. A thrill coursed through me. I had drawn blood at range. A new kind of kill. 10 meters. The wall loomed above us, 3 meters high, rough but climbable. I slung the gun across my back and leapt at the stone, clawing for handholds. To my left, a boy took a shot through the skull, his body tumbling back into the mob. To my right, another climbed, only to be speared by a bayonet as he reached the top. He shrieked, then fell, twitching. I hauled myself over, teeth bared. A guard was waiting, rifle raised. I grabbed his uniform, yanked him forward, and hurled him screaming to the ground below. His skull burst on the rocks. I was inside. Chaos exploded. Skraka's group had breached the rear, smoke and fire rising from the gates. The defenders fell back in disciplined lines, covering one another, laying down bursts of fire. Their order clashed against our fury, and the compound became a storm of blood. I fought like an animal, firing until my charge ran dry, then swinging the laser gun like a club. A knife slashed across my side. I answered with a blow that shattered ribs. A bullet grazed my arm, spraying blood. Pain only drove me harder. Around me, boys roared and hacked and tore, our numbers pressing the humans back step by step. They regrouped at the central barracks, overturning crates and tables into barricades. Their officer shouted orders, his voice clear even over the din. They fought like cornered wolves, desperate, dangerous. Gragskull bellowed, pointing with his axe. Flank them, no escape. Half the boys surged left. The rest of us crashed headlong into the front, smashing into the barricades. I vaulted over, club in hand, and landed among 3 guards. One thrust his bayonet into my side. I ignored it, crushing his skull with a swing. The others fell in moments, their blood hot on my skin. The fight raged through the barracks, room to room, corridor to corridor. Humans fought bravely, but bravery does not stop green muscle. One by one, they fell. Skraka's cleaver rose and fell like a metronome, each swing cutting another life short. By the end, the outpost was ours. The walls burned. The ground was slick with blood. Loot was gathered: guns, tools, food, anything useful. I stood in the smoke, chest heaving, body aching, laser gun broken in my hands. My first true battle against trained soldiers. My first taste of real war. And deep inside, beyond the rage and the hunger, something whispered, the human officer's last stand, the defiance in his eyes. They had fought not for food or dominance, but for each other, for something beyond themselves. It was not Orsi, but it made me wonder. The outpost raid changed everything. It was no longer scraps of loot and easy prey. This was blood on stone, guns in every hand, fire rising to the sky, and it had drawn attention. When we returned, the camp was different, bigger, louder, hungrier. More boys had arrived, drawn by the promise of battle. Smoke poured from workshops as mechs hammered new weapons out of scavenged steel. Squigs shrieked in their pens. Drums pounded deep into the night, not for celebration, but as a heartbeat of something larger. The Wah was stirring. At the center of it all stood Grimtooth, the war boss, a mountain of scars and muscle. One eye replaced with a burning red lens, a power claw sparking at his side. He raised a captured Imperial map, high for all to see, the parchment nearly lost in his massive fist. "Big fight coming," he roared. "Humies march this way. Tanks, soldiers, Marines." The crowd of orcs bellowed in approval. Where others saw threat, we saw promise. Then the weird boy stepped forward, eyes blazing green fire, mouth foaming with words that weren't his own. "War comes," he hissed, voice echoing like thunder. "The sky burns. Metal giants stride the land. Blood feeds the gods. The Wah is near." Every orc there roared the word together, the sound shaking the very ground. Wah, 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 for the first time. I felt it fully, the surge that bound us together. A psychic storm, born of our rage and hunger, shaping chaos into purpose. My tusks ached, my muscles thrummed. War wasn't just coming. War was already here, growing inside us, too big to be contained. In the days that followed, the camp transformed. Squads drilled not in silence or discipline, but in violence fists, axes. Guns tested on each other until blood slicked the dirt. Vehicles rolled out half-welded, their engines coughing smoke but roaring with power. I trained with my laser gun, then with a flamer I claimed from the loot pile. Nazgrim, a mech with iron teeth and grease-stained hands, showed me how to use it. Fuel gauge here, safety here, point wrong way, burn own face off. He laughed, then slapped me on the shoulder. "Good weapon. Scary. Make humies scream. Keep it close. Keep me closer. I give you gear. You keep me alive. Deal. I nodded. Orcs don't shake hands often, but we did. It felt different, almost like trust. Crunch returned from a scouting run. His chest was cut open, but he didn't seem to notice. He spoke only one word: Marines. The camp grew louder at that. Some boys cheered. Others fell quiet, remembering. Even Zit stopped bragging long enough to spit in the dirt. Marines, he muttered. That's a fight worth telling. That night, as drums thundered and fires lit the sky, I sat by the flames with my flamer across my lap. Around me, boys wrestled, drank, smashed skulls for fun. But my mind drifted back to the human officer at the outpost, to the woman at the farm. They had fought not for dominance, but for something else, something bigger than themselves. We orcs fight because we are orcs. But was there more? The thought burned like the firelight in my weapons tank. Tomorrow, I would find out. The battle was a storm without end. Fire, smoke, blood, everything blurred into one endless roar. I had lost count of how many humans I killed, how many orcs fell beside me. Only the wah mattered. That great howl of violence that bound us together. Then came the tank. A shadow loomed on the ridge, larger than anything I had faced. Its cannon spat thunder, the ground erupting beneath us. The blast hurled me into rubble. Stone crushed my legs, pinning me to the dirt. Pain burned hot, then cold. My chest rose shallow. I knew what it meant. I tried to stand, but my body would not obey. Around me, the field was littered with corpses, green and pale, orc and human alike. Nazgrim was nowhere to be seen. Perhaps alive, perhaps dead. Crunch, too, was gone, swallowed by the chaos. I turned my head. Beside me lay the broken helmet of the space marine we had downed earlier. His contempt still haunted me, his words ringing louder than the guns we fight to protect. You fight because you know nothing else. Perhaps he was right, perhaps not. But as the smoke coiled above, I thought of the human woman at the farm, throwing herself between me and her children. Of the officer at the outpost, rallying his men even as death closed in. They fought for something beyond themselves. And I, an orc, had fought only because that is what I was made to do. Yet, had I not grown, had I not earned a name, taken weapons, claimed victories, was survival itself not purpose enough? My vision blurred. The roar of battle faded. I felt the warmth of blood pooling beneath me. Death was near, but despair did not come. Orcs do not fear dying. We know the truth, our spores will seed the soil, and from the ground new boys will rise. The cycle continues. Life, war, death, rebirth, forever. A shadow fell across me. A massive blue boot stepped into view. A Marine. His weapon hummed as it powered up, its barrel aimed at my head. I bared my tusks, not in fear, but in defiance. I was orc. I rasped, voice thick with blood. I fought. I killed. I died orc. The weapon's whine rose to a scream. The last thing I saw was the glow of its charge. Then darkness. But in that darkness, I felt it the echo of a truth that bound us all, human and orc alike. War without end. War that fed itself. War that was life. And in that endless war, somewhere, someday, the spores of Grubskull would rise again. Green is best. Green is forever.